Kia ora, my name is Craig Murray, and you've tuned into the Small Business and Entrepreneur Festival podcast delivered to you by DHL. Today, we are super lucky, and I'm pretty stoked too, because Tak Mutu is on the podcast, one of my very good friends. He's also based in Takurua, one of the directors for MDA Group, and we're going to be talking about all things tourism, events, traffic light system, everything. And this one's going to be really, really fun. It's not that scripted like other ones are, but we will get a lot of cool information. So without further ado, I will bring Tak into the stream. Kia ora, bro.
Kia ora, bro. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you very much. Looks like you're in a garage. Where are you based at the moment, Tak?
I'm actually at our bus yard in our shed at the moment. I'm getting back to my roots of being on the tools. So between fixing buses and fixing bikes, I've got my hands full at the moment, just while we staff up again, ready for hopefully a busy summer.
Indeed. Well, let's hope it is, although it does not look like summer out there at the moment. Typical December weather, though. It's always raining when you're trying to do your Christmas shopping in New Zealand.
Mate, this is Aotearoa. You just plan for any weather. I'm going to go buy a rain jacket today, and it's December. It's the start of summer, and I'm going to go buy a nice, beautiful cactus rain jacket.
And I also think it is the most dangerous time to walk around in jandals because it's hot and it's slippery, especially around town, and you go into the likes of the central malls and things like that, and it's very slippery. Anyway, that's very much a New Zealand and Australian problem. So like all of our podcasts, I always start with the same question. And the first question I ask is, what was your first ever job? I mean, and I'm talking about your first ever job, whether that was mowing the lawns for your dad or how you got your first pocket money. And then if you could just lead into a little bit of your professional origin, where you started, and whether it's in the tourism space, and then what you do now.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I was probably a typical Kiwi kid who washed the cars, for pocket money and mowed the lawns and stuff like that. But I mean, my first real job though was working for a surf shop in Rotorua called Serious Fun, and I was always told that we had the largest selection of bikinis in New Zealand. And I mean, like, to be fair, it was wall-to-wall bikinis in this place. And so when I would sometimes run the shop by myself, and you got to remember I was like a 15-year-old kid running this surf shop by myself, or with like another 15-year-old kid, it was left to us to fit ladies into the bikinis that they wanted. So I grew a real good understanding of how to size ladies up. And I still do it today. So, because I'm one of those weird dudes who actually likes shopping. I like going shopping, and I love taking my better half out or taking my mates out and finding them cool dresses and stuff like that. But a skill that I learned when I was 15 was how to work out the size of a lady. You never say it out loud, by the way. You never say it out loud, ever, ever. That's just good etiquette.
Rule number one. Rule number one. And then, so you moved out of Serious Fun, and what did you do after that?
After Serious Fun, I got into the tourism scene, and I went and studied a certificate of venture tourism at Waitangi Institute of Technology, and then got into working in tourism that year. I ended up with a company called Kaitiakitanga Adventures, rafting and sledging company based out of Rotorua, and I was there for the next 7 years, just rafting and sledging the rivers of the Rotorua region, of the Bay of Plenty region. It was an awesome time, actually. I suppose if you think about my professional career, I've spent a lifetime in tourism and hospitality, and it all started way back then at Kaitiakitanga. Funny story though, like how I got that job, because I'd been walking in the mountains around the Horomanga Valley in Whitnaki Forest, and I was tailoring Charlie for this group, and one of the kids started to walk in the wrong direction. I say kids, he was older than me. Well, one of the students was walking off in the wrong direction, and I was calling out to him, "Hey, Matt," he was a stoner dude. He was like, "Huh?" I said, "Bro, you're going off in the wrong direction. We're supposed to be going that way." And he turns around and goes, "Oh." and carries on the footpath. But I see actually not far ahead of him, there's like a break of light in the forest, and so I walk up I walk to the light, that thing that you're not supposed to do, and I end up at this amazing little spot. I was on the edge of a cliff looking down into the Whanaungatanga Valley, into the river. Then there's this beautiful green belt of forest, and then a cloud that hangs over the top of that forest, and then just this last little green belt as you reach the mountaintops on the other side of the valley there, and then blue sky above that. And I had this epiphany. I was like, boom, this is what I want to do for a job. This is where I want to bring people. And I was 17 at the time, and so immediately I got out of that forest. When we finished that trip, as soon as I got out of that forest, I immediately called Kaitiaki and said, "Hey, have you guys got any jobs going?" They said, "Can you swim?" And at the time I was playing water polo for New Zealand, so I'm like, "Yeah, I can swim. I can definitely swim." And they were like, "Can you do you know Maori?" And I grew up in a total immersion school, so I was like, "Yeah, I speak Maori fluently." I said, "Can you sing?" I'm like, "Oh, I play guitar pretty good. Can try out my singing if I can't sing." And I said, "Sweet as, come on down." And that's where it kicked off, really. The next day I was down there doing my trial day at the end of the trip. I was with a guy named Stevie Wall, who was one of the owners at the time. And I was cleaning gear at the end of the trip. And he looked at me and he goes, "What are you doing, bro?" And I said, "Oh, sorry, bro. I was just cleaning the gear." He goes, "Why are you doing that?" I said, "Oh, I just thought that's what you do at the end of the trip." He goes, "It is. There's a job here if you want it." And the rest was history, really. I started training up the next day after that trial day, and got qualified pretty quickly. Grabbed my bus license within the next sort of 6 months or so. So before I was 18, at the time, you could get your license, because licenses pretty quick. Got my license and I was away. Lifetime tourism.
Lifetime of tourism. So you were at Kaitiaki for 7 years, and now you are the director for the MDA Group. So can you tell us a little bit about your journey with the MDA Group and what that's all about?
Yeah, so MDA started way back in 1989 under the name Priceless Experiences, bringing international school students into New Zealand for 1 week or 2 week long trips. We still do that today. In fact, our first 2 clients that we started back with way back then in 89, 1990, we still have today. One of them just emailed last week to say, "Hey, listen, we don't think 2022 is going to happen, but we want to be back to in 2023." And that's a good contract for us and good friends from that school. So I'm pretty stoked that they're going to be, coming back onto our shores and coming back with us still. But started way back then as an educational tour company, and just evolved over the years. I got involved in 2007. The owners at the time were Nick and Kimmy Chater. They were also my tutors at Polytech when I was a student there as well. So that was the connection. And they sort of said, "Do you want to come on board? Do you want to come and work with us?" I was like, "Hell yeah, I do. Really keen. I really want to trip around New Zealand, taking people rafting and mountain biking and rock climbing. That sounds like the dream."
Mm-hmm.
And they said, "Cool. Well, do you want to come on board in a bigger way? Like we'd like to see you eventually become a part owner of the business." So that's what I spent the next couple of years doing, is sort of working my way into the admin side of the business. Then eventually bought a third of the shares. So we're third partners by 2009. And then in 2011, they could see that the business was starting to grow. They could see that it was starting to head off in a bit of a different direction from the lifestyle business that they originally wanted it to be. And so they said, "Do you want to buy the last of the shares out?" And I was pretty nervy about that, because I knew there was a bunch of skills I didn't have with business. I never studied business. I started working when I was 17 in the tourism industry, and so I finished my certificate of adventure tourism, and that was it as far as academia goes. I was out of that scene and straight into work. So I called my brother, who was area manager for Event Cinemas at the time, and said, "Hey, bro, come back and help me start Mountain Bike Rotorua. Come be a part of the group. Come buy the shares out with me." And so he talked to his missus, and they said, "Yep, let's do it. Let's go back to Rotorua. Let's give this a try." And so at the same time that we were starting Mountain Bike Rotorua, we were buying out the last of the shares and slowly building our team. And the rest is history, really. We just kept on building and building on what we had, and slowly diversified the different tourism and hospitality tentacles that we had. And it's where we are today. COVID.
So what? COVID, yeah. So we'll dig into about the last 22 months after in the next few questions. But the next question I like to ask everyone as well is, what brand has had the biggest impact on you, and why?
You mean of the brands that we own, or
No, any brand, whether it's Apple, Nike, Allbirds. We've had people who have mentioned personalities that have been the brand for them.
It's interesting, eh? Like, I've been listening to the Business Wars podcast, and podcasts. I never did these things until lockdown came, and now I'm addicted to podcasts. So, but I wouldn't be able to single out any single brand because there are things that I learn about brands that I really like, or from businesses rather that I like, and there are things that I learn from these businesses and these brands that I don't like. And so they all have an impact in some way, shape, or form. So, in all honesty, none at the moment stand out above the others. There are definitely brands that I like, though. I love I love the idea of Red Bull. Whether you like the drink or not, is beside the point. But the way that brand, has built itself, the way the business diversified and went to its media house stream, and there are a lot of doubters about Red Bull Media House, and now look at that juggernaut, grow. Allbirds is a cool story to look at, and the story behind the product, the material that they use, all that sort of stuff. So, like I say, it's really hard to single anything out. The reality is, I love learning from all those different businesses. I love seeing things that I really dig from these businesses, and I love seeing things that I don't like as well. Because that provides a lot of insight for me. And probably these last 22 months that I'm sure we'll get into a little bit more depth in soon, it really showed me that the importance of really thinking about where your value sets are and how you want to act as a business are super important. Because at the end of the day, to build a brand is can be hit or miss. You can have the perfect product, but if you don't build your brand very well, then it might not work out. And we've seen that. There's plenty of stories around that like that. But at the end of the day, if you can carry your value set through, because making money isn't. Gosh, am I saying this out loud? Making money isn't hard. If you just want to go out and make money, there are some really easy ways to do that. Gosh, just buy a house in New Zealand in a year, you'll make more than you probably do just from working every day. That's just the reality of a hot housing market. But making money in a way that is sustainable and that carries strong values through, like trying to look after people around you, like trying to look after the environment. Now, there's a challenge. There's a challenge that you can set out to everyone. And if I'm being really honest, I haven't found a brand that probably ticks all those boxes at the moment. A brand that, or a business that is employing, people and paying them really well, and being completely regenerative across every facet, whether it's environmental impacts or even just the social and community impacts, or the cultural impacts as well. I would challenge anyone to show me a brand that can say that it is having positive impacts across all those ideas, across culture, community, and environment, and is also, feeding the people that it employs really well. And that's the brand that if I can find that brand, then we'll start talking about that. But I know that's where I'm trying to get to.
I suppose the closest one that I could think of off the top of my head would be Patagonia, and their value set, and they've had the same ethos right from the inception right to where it is now. There's also, we did a podcast a few weeks ago with a guy named Tim Jones, and Tim Jones is an advocate for the B Corp. So if you have not heard of B Corp yet, it's basically a accreditation where they look throughout, they audit your whole business from who you employ, how you employ them, where your rubbish goes, everything, and it's an accreditation to showcase that you are doing exactly what you, or trying to do your best of what you just sort of suggested.
Yeah, Patagonia is one of those interesting runs, right? Like you know, if I look at that model, for instance, what would really set it apart for me is that if we stop shipping their stuff and actually start making their garments locally, that would actually change the impact for me. But I suspect, you know, if you really dive deep into the different impacts that they have, I would suspect that it wouldn't tick all those boxes either. But you're right. Like it's a good model, and it's a good example of where businesses can here. But I actually think they can do more as well. You know, I think there's. But maybe I'm just being too critical. Maybe I'm being hypercritical there. I don't know, bro.
It's good to be aspirational, right? So if that's where that's what you're aiming to go, and then that's blue sky thinking, and that's exactly why we're having this chat to talk about, well, what is the goal? A question that I'd like to ask you is, how do you define a brand? What's your definition of brand?
What's my definition of a brand? Oh, that's just something that you can recognize, right? Something that I suspect there's a value in it, and you know, I think of a brand having some sort of value, and not just financially, but something that you can recognize. I think just is a really broad idea of a brand. Super broad question, though, right?
Yeah, I really like Jeff Bezos's definition of brand, where it's how people describe your brand when you're not in the room.
Yeah,
that's your brand. That's his definition of a brand, anyway. So 22 months, March 2020, everything sort of changed, specifically for anyone in the tourism, accommodation, hospitality space. Our tap for tourism, we're based here in Rotorua, very much a tourism town, was turned almost right off. Luckily in Rotorua, 60% of visits are domestic, which is, we're in a fortunate position. But Tak, can you tell us how the journey's been over since March 2020 and some of the challenges that you've faced?
Personally, it's been a huge growth period for me. You know, like I look at the way I've changed, the way I interact with my family have changed, my values, my time, everything has changed for me personally, and it's actually been a really positive thing for me. I've dedicated my life to working. You know, if I think about when I was rafting, for instance, I worked 101 days in a row on the Kaitiakitanga and Rangitaiki rivers, and then I had one day off and worked another 25. It's just that work ethic, right? That mentality of, oh, you just work. You know, if there's work there, just work, get it done. That's what we're taught in the marae. If you see a job, that's yours, you own it. And I've spent a lifetime just being like that. But you know, I have a 5-year-old daughter, and that first lockdown that we had, and I know that for a bunch of people, and I always struggle to say this out publicly because I know for a whole bunch of people it was a terribly hard time. You know, it was not a good time, but for me and my little family, it was an amazing time. You know, it was an absolutely amazing time. I don't know if I ever would have had that opportunity to take, 6 weeks just to hang out at home with my little family. So, I had some big personal growth during that period where I realized that actually I really like having this family time. I really like hanging out with my little girl and watching her grow and teaching her the good things that I know and making sure that she doesn't learn my bad habits and all that sort of jazz. And I think that probably has been reflected to how I operate at work now as well. You know, I mean, we've always had a value set here that aligned with Maori, traditional Maori values, you know, between Manaakitanga, Whanaungatanga, and Kaitiakitanga. So, you know, Manaakitanga being that caring for the people around us. You know, we try our best to look after everyone around us, and you know, in our office with our senior managers, it's always right. We take care of our staff, and our staff take care of our visitors. You know, that's the order of events, and we have to do everything we can to take care of our crew. But then that Whanaungatanga, creating relationships around us. You know, there's been even more of an emphasis around that, especially with COVID especially with the, as the Prime Minister would say, that kindness that we need to show to other people. Those values have come out even stronger through COVID, and while the business, I mean, let's be honest, it's for tourism and hospitality, it's been a shitty 2 years for business. If I look at our premium division, for instance, premium was running premium or luxury tours was our biggest money spinner for the whole group. If you think about all the different things that we do, that was almost half our revenue for the whole group. And so the year that COVID hit, that 2019-2020 financial year, we did 1,500 premium tours. In the last, I think, what did you say, 22 months? We've done 4. 3 of those were straight after lockdown for the last few sort of clients who were left stuck in New Zealand, just before they shot off back home to their various countries. So that's been absolutely decimated. So yeah, from a business perspective, it's been a tough time, but we set some. When COVID first hit, we set some goals. So we did a big stock take of what we had. We both financially, asset wise, and of course socially, who we had around us, and we just set some small goals. And we said to the team, right, forget about profits. This is going to be around for years. So until 2025, that's not a part of your KPIs anymore. That's just throw profits out the door for now. We just have to make more than we spend. That's all we have to do. But we set a priority of hanging on to our team. Now, to hang on to our team, the business has to survive. So I suppose at the forefront is, what do we need for the business to survive? So we looked at all our debts, we looked at what capital we had left in the bank, we looked at our assets, and we set out a financial plan for the business to survive. And then very close to that is, all right, now how do we retain everyone on our team? There's a bunch of different reasons we want to do that. One, we're a family business. My brother and I own the group. My sister-in-law is our cafe and retail manager. My father-in-law is one of our bus drivers. My brother-in-law is our in-house contractor builder. My cousin is our events manager. His daughter was one of our baristas. So it is very much a family business. So looking after our staff, I don't have a choice in that. That's what we have to do. But we also know that, like you said, Rotorua has a strong domestic market, and one of our businesses is Mountain Bike Rotorua. And that was significantly weighted towards domestic tourism. 60% prior to COVID of our business was domestic. So we knew that we had an opportunity to at least survive in part through having the international borders closed. But we also know that with that premium side, in tourism, we know that luxury is going to be more than likely the first sector to come back in any significant way. Luxury, there are private jets lined up in countries all around the world just wanting to land here in New Zealand. The way that we've conducted ourselves over the last 22 months as a country is a thing of desire for people around the world. And, we haven't been perfect. Show me a country that has done this perfectly. But regardless, we are still high on that desirability list. So even if you look at it from a purely commercial point of view, if you want to take away all those values that we just talked about, and the feeling and the responsibility that we feel to hold on to our staff for their sake, look at it from a commercial point of view. If that's the first sector that's going to come back, and we know that for our luxury guides, for instance, it takes years and years to get the sort of skill set that's needed to be able to deliver to that level. You talk about people who have been in the industry for over 20 years as our senior guides in that area. We needed to retain those people just to be ready to go when the borders do reopen. So from a commercial point of view, there's a very good reason to retain all the staff, and that's because the amount of expertise that we'd lose if we didn't, and the amount of time that would take to retrain those staff if the opportunity came to service. I shouldn't say if, when the opportunity again opens up for us to service that premium sector. So once we set that priority of we just need to, the business needs to survive, and we need to retain all our staff, then things start to fall in place, and then we could get our creative juices on around Okay, what do we need to do that? All right, so if, let's expect a bit of a hit on Mountain Bike to do it. So 60% of its custom was domestic before COVID hit. Let's be really conservative and assume that we're going to lose a little bit more than that, just in case. Then we looked at the other sides of it. Premium division. Well, in the last 7 years, we hadn't had a single New Zealand client. So, we absolutely wiped that off the table. We said, all right, we're not going to get anything premium until those gates reopen. So let's not think about premium for at least 2 or 3 years. In the event sector, we knew that we had some strong domestic events that we could maintain because we run corporate events. We manage people's conferences or the team building groups that we do and all that sort of jazz. And we know we had the capability to do that throughout New Zealand. So why don't we look at bolstering that side a little bit? Let's find some events. Let's maybe start some events. Let's really ramp up that side because there's probably going to be an opportunity there. Our online presence was terrible pre-COVID. We were able to rest on our laurels for a bunch of things, in particular for retail. Being based at the busiest mountain bike facility or forest in the world at the moment gave us a real natural custom for coming through our business. So, let's build our online presence and our online capability. And so once we start to get these sort of ideas and then start to implement a bunch of these, we start to see a pathway forward. And then all of a sudden, lockdown ended, and mountain biking pre-COVID, by the way, for us was about 15% of the total group. Okay, it now accounts for around about 80 or 90%, somewhere around that sort of range. And we are currently running at around about 30 or 40% of where we were as far as gross revenue goes pre-COVID. So it just goes to show how much mountain biking has really grown over the last period, and we feel very fortunate not to have all our eggs in one basket, whether it be events or premium tourism or mountain biking. But that little bit of a diversity that we've had has really played really well for us, and that popularity of mountain biking. I mean, there are talks about mountain biking in New Zealand has grown by 300% as far as retail goes over the last year. That's huge, man. That is ridiculous.
It's
and and for us, we've been able to capitalize on that side for sure. So I'm pleased to say that we held on to everyone. We haven't, we had staff move on, but we haven't had to make anyone redundant. In fact, we've actually grown in the number of staff. I think pre-COVID, or when COVID hit, we had 55 staff. We currently have 68 or something like that. So I don't know how we've managed to do it. It still doesn't quite make sense in my books. We're running on 30 to 40% of our gross revenue from pre-COVID, but we have more staff than we've ever had before. So I don't know, it works. We've got more money coming in than going out, and that's the most important part of business, right?
Well, that's life, isn't it? So long as you can not spend more money than you make, then you're going to do all right. Hey, I just might touch on your team. So you've scaled up to be 68 staff. How do you communicate with all your team? Do you do it? What technology do you use?
Yeah, so we've got. It depends which part of it you're talking about. Funnily enough, we most of our group chats. So we have wide group chats with our different business units. So like our events team has a group chat in Messenger, of all things. Messenger by Meta. I think it's the new branding, isn't it?
Meta, it is, yep.
Meta. Same with our mountain biking, MDA management, and MDA crew. So we've got 4 or 5 different chat groups for the 5 different chat groups for the 5 different parts of the business. The central comms is through an app called When I Work. So that does all our rostering, all our keeping of hours for staff, and that's our centralized communication base, and that just blasts out either by text or by email. But most of our regular comms are done with Messenger by Meta, and we catch up quarterly as a full group. So every quarter we bring everyone from every division together and have drinks and food and go and do something fun. Actually, not in that order. We catch up, we do the formalities, catch up on safety, ops, anything that we need to, update on the group, how it's tracking, all that sort of jazz, and then we have food and drinks, and then, like I say, go and do something fun. We try and actually do a tourism activity around the region every quarter. So we've done Canopy, we've done Zorb, Velocity Valley, Redwoods Tree. The last one that we actually did was Motion just last month. We took everyone to Motion to go bowling and do some fun stuff there. Then in COVID, it was a little bit different. So we caught up full team every second day. We pulled everyone together just to keep them engaged and keep them informed. I thought it was pretty important to make sure that everyone felt like they were connected. We know that we have young staff, we've got old staff, we've got staff who are in their 80s, bro. Like, we've got such a broad range from 14 to 80. We've got such a broad range of demographics and all that sort of jazz. So we want to make sure that we're as connected as possible to everyone, to keep them informed, to keep them engaged, and to get them jazzed. And again, it comes back to that ethos. We look after them, and then when we reopen, they'll look after everyone else. And they really have. I think it worked, and we got a pretty damn good culture in our business right now. It's not perfect. Let's not lie. It's not perfect, but it's good.
So I might lean into your leadership tactics a little bit, because you said you got 68 staff. You said some of them one of them or two of them are in their 80s, and then you've got young kids as well, or not young kids, but young adults working in your bike shops and making coffees. What tactics do you change, or your leadership conversations with different types of people? And you've got your whanau, your family as well, and then you've got non-whanau or non-blood whanau anyway. I know your team is like a family, but how does it change?
Yeah, I think just oh gosh, I had a friend who called me the chameleon once. He's just like, you adapt to the surroundings that you're in, right? Well, it's the same with people. The way that you, like, for instance, and for those who don't know, Craig and I live around the corner from each other. And the way we're talking on this podcast right now is quite different to the way that we present ourselves to each other.
So Tuck's got a daughter, Maya, and they're in the same class as my boy Malachi. Hey, Tuck! No, he's just my garage. No, it's kidding.
Yeah. But the reality is, I do, as most people would, do change the way that I present to different people, and that goes by personality type and by situation. There's a way that you can communicate that resonates with people, and there's a way that you can communicate with people that absolutely puts them off you. And I couldn't. It comes really naturally for me, and so naturally that I don't know that I do it. And it wasn't until my mate, it's actually, him, Craig Main from, out of Australia, PCO out of Australia. He was the one who pointed out, and I didn't realize to what extent I did do it until I started thinking about all the different situations I was in. Whether I was in a boardroom with ministers, and CEOs, right through to hanging out the marae with whanau and friends. I absolutely do change the way I interact, and it turns out I do that a lot as well. Whether it be, like you say, those younger crew out in our retail shops, or the older crew who are either guiding, driving buses, or helping us out at events. The style changes. I don't, and like I say, I don't really notice it at the time. I have to reflect on that. And I suspect it comes from a lifetime of guiding. A lifetime of hosting people, and it was something that Jason Wright, one of the owners of Kaitiakitanga, said to me when I was 18. He said, how you guide that 20-year-old backpacker is going to be different to how you guide that 50-year-old New Zealander. That's the way that you talk to that 20-year-old backpacker is going to be different to that. Make sure that you don't try and use the same joke on that 20-year-old backpackers. And because to be honest,
I'd give it a crack.
I was a young.
What's that? I'd give the joke a crack.
Yeah, not some
look,
of the jokes. And I learned that the hard way. The reason he had that chat with me is because I was quite inappropriate. You talk about that locker room talk that we talked about with Donald Trump and all that sort of jazz. There is probably a time or a place where you can get away with that sort of shit, but you can't get away with it everywhere, and there are times where you have to be a bit more sensitive because people won't resonate with how you present. And I think that genuinely did come from guiding and having to adapt to the different people, especially with a company like Kaitiakitanga who didn't just service one sector. Like in tourism, you can get businesses which are really heavy and almost completely serve backpacker youth, and then you can get other parts of it which completely serve corporate markets, right? The way that you're going to present to those two as a guide is going to be completely different to make sure that they have the best time that they can. The things that you're going to talk about are going to be completely different. I mean, something that we really concentrate on in that luxury market, we know that we have clients who come through who absolutely love Maori arts and crafts, for instance. And so that's what we're going to spend a lot of time basing our conversations around is Maori arts and crafts. Whereas there are others who are just purely into nature. They might just be into bird watching, and that's all they want to do. And so that's what we'll go and do. We'll go and hang out in nature. We'll talk about the environment, and we'll talk about and we'll go spot some birds for them. It's that adapting to the situation. And there isn't one particular leadership style I use. I know that I'll just adapt to the situation that I'm handed, or that I'm handed.
Our audience is typically small business owners, people working in small business space, entrepreneurs, or potentially people who have got a business idea who haven't taken that step to ideate it into reality. So what would be your single most valuable piece of advice for a person who's starting a new business right now?
Make sure that you actually want to own a business. And I say that because one of my good friends growing up, and he's a really good mate, we were like there's photos of us as babies in the bath naked together. We've been friends for a long time. And he went and studied business management and decided that he wanted to own a business. So his idea was to go and start a bar because he wanted to control his own time and have more time to do things. And I'm like, I mean, you've owned a bar, bro. You know what it's like. You have less time, especially if you only have one bar. Hospitality in particular takes scale to be able to actually step back from it, and huge scale, because those margins can be really thin. And his whole reason for wanting to get into business is to give himself more time. And I'm like, well, that's not how it's going to work, especially for these first 5 to 10 years, bro. You're going to have no time and probably no money as well. You're going to reinvest it all back in there, and it's going to take a while, especially in that particular line of business. So make sure that the reasons that you're getting into business are the right ones, because I too often hear people who are like, yeah, I want to make more money, yeah, I want to have more time and all that sort of jazz. And my first 5 years of being of owning the group outright with my brother, I was paying myself $21,000 a year or thereabouts, because I needed to sink everything back into the business. It was carrying heaps of debt at the time. It was constantly in overdraft. Since I'd bought into the business, it would operate 10 months. It would operate 10 months of the year in bloody overdraft, and that was tens of thousands of dollars of interest alone just from operating like that. So it was a hole that we needed to dig it out of, and it just took a bit of effort to get it to a spot to where I could actually start to pay myself a fairer wage where I could at least buy a house. Get onto that housing buzz that everyone should be on, and everyone should own a house. By the way, there's an asset that I hope every New Zealander can eventually work themselves into. But get into business for the right reason. I know I could make far more money being the CEO of someone else's business right now than I could just from having my own business. Now, long term, that's a different story. Long term, I know that actually the way the business has been growing over the years, and if I keep this up for another 5 to 10 years, and it keeps them tracking the way that it is, even in this COVID environment, I could have a very different value in this business. So, but short term, if I just wanted to make money, go and be a CEO of a bank. ANZ pays pretty well, hey?
ANZ, in New Zealand, they're right too. Fonterra, get into that. Fonterra have had a bumper year as well, almost record-breaking year. Similar to what some of our other guests have had, I've had a number of different entrepreneurs, business owners, and a lot of them have started their business as a side hustle. And both of my businesses have been side hustles to start with. So you have your income from your normal job, and then you work from 7 p.m. till 1 a.m. for 2 years in a row, and just banging out until you've got the financial security to be able to jump into your business, and your eyes are a little bit more wide open when you're going into the business, because you can guesstimate or forecast, whatever you want to call it, of what a new business might look like if it hasn't started. And you can do all the spreadsheets you want, but divide it by 5 or maybe divide it by 10, because that's probably what the reality is going to be for the first year or so. And then I also think it's important to understand what you actually want from the business. Like you said, like, do you want to grow a big business of 68 staff, or do you want to just work for yourself and contract everyone? Because that's the model that I like. I don't want to take on. I don't think I'd be a very good manager, to be honest. I'd rather go surfing or fishing and things like that. Whenever I want, like Friday, I'm going to go fishing. Looking good.
See, I'm the other way, because I get obsessive over shit. So, like throw a problem at me, and I struggle to let go of it until it's solved, and I can't let go of it. But yeah, funny you say that around the side hustle stuff, because I suppose I look at when MDA has branched out into something new. Traditionally, we would treat it like a side hustle, so we wouldn't go all in on it. It would be a low risk approach to starting the new side business. So mountain bike rotor is a really good example of that. We did our homework, so we had a pretty we thought we had a good idea of what that what the previous leasees or concession holders of that area were doing, and it really did look like like it was its own little side hustle business. It was a very small operation. It was probably good enough to be a lifestyle business for someone, but not a part of a bigger group. It probably didn't have the depth and the revenue to be part of a bigger group. So we started that. We invested for us at the time quite a bit of capital into it, but not so much that if it didn't work out to our projections that we would fail. So it was a very conservative approach to it. And part of the reason we're so conservative with it too is because the grantors of the concession also had their big plans, and they said, cool, like, just be temporary for now, because we're going to support you with the next stage of development in the next 2 to 3 years. It took 11 years for that bloody development to happen, by the way, or 10 years for that development to actually kick off. So our temporary facilities weren't that temporary in the end. But as we've matured over the years, that approach has changed, because we've gathered enough knowledge around all the different things that we do. I'm sorry if there's background noise there. Being in a bus yard. That conservative approach has definitely changed. So if we're entering, and over the last 3 years, we have actually expanded quite a bit. We've probably had our biggest growth in the last 3 to 4 years. Even in particular divisions, even during COVID. But like I say, we've been less conservative with our approach to starting things, because our knowledge and our understanding of these areas that we're going into is much better. So for example, and I know it's a controversial topic, especially in mountain biking and Rotorua, but when we won the tender for shuttles in the forest, we had a pretty good understanding of where we thought the last operator was at, the sort of numbers they were doing, the sort of revenue they're generating, and sort of costs they had, because we had so much information ourselves on the forest in that area. And so when, funnily enough, our projections that we put forward, and I always do projections in 3 ways. I do, the worst case scenario, the likely scenario, and the aspirational scenario, or the aspirational forecast. And we managed to actually reach our aspirational forecast in that first year of operation. So it means that our numbers, we're pretty accurate, and it just goes to show the knowledge and the depth that we've got now to be able to guess the next thing coming up. But for instance, right now we're trying to get a gin brand underway. Funny enough, it's an idea that we had about 8 years ago. My brother and I, gin has been my drink since I was 18. Go out to the lab bar and order a gin, lime, and lemonade. And I'm far more mature now. It's just gin and tonic.
At home.
What's that?
At home as well.
Home.
The lab bar.
yeah, not at the lab bar, but at the office. We've got a gin fridge at our office. Every office needs a gin fridge, by the way. It's a very important part of the office. Very, very important part, piece of equipment. But with that gin side, we're going into an area that we don't really know. So we've never sold alcohol before. We've never produced it. We've drunk it. But and so we will be far more conservative with how we start that. Start off with small batches of 1,000, and what we know is that, well, we can afford to throw money at producing 1,000 bottles of each of these 3 gins that we want to produce. And the worst case scenario that we've got at the moment is that my brother and I end up with 3,000 bottles of gin between our 2 garages, and we're like, cool, lifetime supply of gin. Guess what you're getting for Christmas? But best case scenario is that it sells well. People like the drink, they like the brand, and then we can go and start building on building out, on producing our next 1,000, and so on and so forth, and then let it grow quite organically from there. But that's that business isn't one that we're starting to go out and make money. We're doing that because we love gin, and we love the idea of gifting gin. We love the idea of drinking gin with our friends, and we don't feel the need to make money from it. Whereas something like our online shop, Wheelies.shop, that is pure retail, that there was built to create or to generate more revenue so that we could hold on to our staff. So that was one of our COVID lockdown businesses that we started in. It's a drop ship business. So while it's a low risk business, we didn't mind spending money on it because we could actually see the potential for high rewards from that. And so we put a bit more into that, and we know that that we can ramp that up or dial it down if we need to, and at a very calculated risk. But 2 very different approaches, those 2.
So, Tak, you need to listen to, well, not need to, I would suggest you listen to a podcast I've just done, actually, with a lady named Justine Troy. Justine Troy and her husband, Jeff Ross, developed 42 Below vodka in their garage in Oriental Parade. They exited for 185.
Never heard of that. Never heard of that.
never heard of that brand. Pretty much game changer in regards to a lot of the way that a lot of businesses develop brand.
Yeah.
And some of the tactics that they had were really awesome. They sold to Bacardi for 185 million.
Yeah, that's right.
There you go. It is a big sector. Just getting to the last couple of questions. So I suppose, where do you see tourism going in the next sort of 5 years?
I actually just got asked this yesterday. I was doing a innovation interview in particular for Māori tourism, but for the whole tourism sector. That's the big question they're asking, right? Which is, where are we going? Where are we going? Honestly, I don't know. Where are we going? Well, there are some theories that I can throw out at you, but another reason we want to keep a hold of our whole team is because we have a really malleable team. I love that word, by the way, malleable. But we have a team that we can push into whatever direction that we need to in tourism and hospitality. And so if there's an area that looks like it's going to come back stronger than the others, then we can start to head off in that direction. We my brother and I built up a war chest before COVID hit because we wanted to get into commercial real estate. So what we did was pull back the investments and held on to that capital to be able to save the team and then to reinvest when tourism does come back. As I said before, I think premium's going to come back pretty quickly. Once isolation rules and stuff drop, I think you'll see those business class seats, whichever ones are available, and the private jets line up at the gates and make their way into New Zealand. I think backpacker youth is going to have a rough time initially. I mean, we used to have you talk about our mate from Hakatuas and look at Strays, look at QEX, look at Top Deck. I don't know where they're going to sit coming back. I think it's going to be, like I say, a rough time. I can't see all those brands surviving if they try to go back to what they were doing. The flip side to that, though, is that New Zealand is an expensive destination. And so for who might have been an executive level visitor coming to New Zealand, that real typical FIT market, staying in 3 to 4 star hotels, maybe they still want to come back to New Zealand. Maybe New Zealand's still super desirable. So maybe they will say, well, we can't do New Zealand how we wanted to before because it's so expensive and we just don't have the finances or the confidence to spend that sort of money now. So we're going to go and do that budget travel around New Zealand. Maybe that will happen. I don't think it will. My gut feeling says that backpacker youth won't return to how it used to be with lots of hop-on, hop-off services. I think the premium market's going to be strong. I think the backpacker youth and budget travel is going to be weak, definitely for the next 5 to 6 years at least. And I hope, and I don't know, but I hope that conscious travellers will start to form. And what I mean by that is ones who actually care about the impacts that they're having around the place, who care about the impacts that they're having on communities, not just shopping by bottom dollar, jump on Trivago or any old travel site and look for who's got the best deal to go rafting or whatever it is, or best priced accommodation, and actually look at who they're buying from and what they do. But again, if you look at the Amazons and stuff like that of the world, that isn't a high priority.
No, they're doing right.
Yeah, that's right. And shopping with a conscience isn't necessarily where everyone's minds are at. So it'll be interesting to see where that goes. But we've if I look at just what we're doing, we're putting our money, we're banking our money on people wanting human connections. We're wanting, we're hoping that people want to connect with real people and not just go for bottom dollar. And let's be honest, that comes at a price. So we're not going to be the cheapest price people, but we think that's where people are going to sit. And so that's where I'm putting my money.
I think a few of the things, if I could add a little bit to that as well, would be ensuring that brands have a story behind it as well. So if there are those conscious travellers who are looking to have a deeper and more meaningful vacation or trip, ensuring that your brand has a good story behind it so they can actually understand your ethos, so they can understand what they're going to get out of it and understand that the level of experience that they're having is going to be better than what it would be if you just go to the cheapest one that's down the road. So
imagine a world where everyone actually looked at the dollar they spend where it went. Like I for instance, I had a switch on my truck that I needed to replace, and for I think it was like $3.96, I could have bought it on Amazon, and it's just like, oh my god, that's ridiculously cheap, because the cheapest one I could find in New Zealand was like $50 or something like that. And I looked at who I was buying it from in New Zealand, and it was just a random little company, just a one dude, and I suspect they're coming out of the same factory and he's buying it from the same person. But the difference was that my money was going to someone here in New Zealand, and it was probably going to go to paying this dude's or this lady's family for the food, or that they put on their table, or for the house that they want to buy here in New Zealand. That's what I was hoping anyway. But this particular switch that I wanted, I could only find in 3 different places. It was on Amazon, and it was on something like AliExpress or one of those sites. Actually, I think it was like China Invasion or one of those websites. Or there was just this one dude on Trade Me who had it. I was like, okay, right, they're from Albany. Okay, so they've got a Kiwi office of some sort. It's probably someone who's living over there. Yes, they're all probably coming from the same place, but hopefully that extra spend goes into, helping some New Zealand family get by just a little bit better. Imagine everyone looked at every dollar they spent and how it went. Go buy Tanqueray gin. Where does my dollar go every time I buy a bottle of Tanqueray gin? Where does it go when I buy Little Bitty? Yeah, that's a shout out to Little Bitty because I like your gin.
That's awesome. Yeah, and it's similar to what Justine said, who we spoke about this before about 42 Below, where now they're in a farm in Hawea, or station they call it, so that means it's a big farm. And they're talking about the welfare of the animals all the way through from eating the grass, what the grass they're eating, through to how the shearer is actually shearing them, not doing it for speed. They're doing it for the experience for the sheep as well, which I thought it's a really different way of farming. So yeah, if you look into those stories and support locals, I just got a brand new surfboard. Thank you, Camazin. Shout out to you. You've been shaping my board since 1996. And he still does it by hand. And I could easily get the same or similar type of board from a manufacturer who does it all via a computer generated, engineered, just goes through, gets done, and then and it's $500 or $400 or whatever it might be. But man, I'd rather support Spoonie because he's been doing my boards forever. And same with my fishing gear. I go to Hamels down the road because Hamels are cool. Hey, last question. This one's been is a cool one. And this one's more about you. What content do you consume at the moment, i.e. podcasts, social media groups, reading, movies, Netflix? What are you into?
Oh gosh, I'm terrible with reading, man. Like I don't have the patience to read a whole book. It just doesn't work. I'm a huge MCU fan. The Marvel Cinematic Universe is amazing.
I'm glad you said that because I was like, what's MCU?
Oh, yeah, the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Got it.
I'm a big fan of the way they've brought all the stories together, gone cross-platform, whether you talk about like movies, TV shows, cartoons, games, comic strips, all that sort of jazz. I love the way they've brought that all together. I love that huge universe like overview they've given of it, and as much as possible try to make everything link up. Like there's an executive producer there who has oversight of all the storylines, who is doing an amazing job, and yeah, I love what they've done with that. Same with Star Wars universe, not quite as brought together, but more nostalgic for me, so I love that. The problem for me is that I use all those different things. Like even when it was reading books, when I did that once upon a time when I was 15, I use those to switch off. I don't use them to necessarily gain knowledge for the most part, and so. I wouldn't say they necessarily bring a lot of value to me, other than they help me unwind. I love listening to music, and so like for the first time ever, I'm decking my house out in a really nice sound system. Like most people who own a house, we've built a bit of equity in our house, and so we decided that we're not going to go on holidays for the next couple of years. Our house was leaking and all that sort of jazz. So we took some of that equity out, and we're doing improvements. And the one ostentatious thing I'm doing, because everything else is like, install heating system, replace roof that leaks, double glazed windows. These are all things that should happen to a house anyway. But the one extravagant thing I'm doing is putting a really good sound system through the house, and that's because I love listening to music. And I have such an eclectic range of music I listen to, anything from orchestras to I've been listening to like a lot of Limp Bizkit and Deftones in the last little bit. Give me my Kiwi tunes, like you'll always find Shapeshifter on a playlist, or 660, or even like some good old Bodunga and Bikrunga, yeah, it is quite the variety of music that I have, and maybe that's the the thing. But I did tell you, I have been a little bit addicted to Business Wars, and it'll be one of the first times that I haven't been using one of these Inspire Wondery. But it'll be one of the first times that I've been listening to or using one of these mediums to actually. I hadn't gone out to intentionally learn things, but I have been learning a lot from them, and I can't stop listening to them. Like I'll be listening to it in my car driving along, and I'll pull up at home, and I can see there's only 5 minutes left to go, and they're telling the story in such a good way that I'm like, I'll just sit in the car for 5 minutes, or I'll chuck an earpod in and listen to it in the house or something like that. And it'll be the first time I've had a podcast or anything like that, or an infographic video or anything like that, where I haven't used it just to sort of chill out and switch off. So yeah,
passive learning is really good, because when you're doing things that you don't need too much brain power going into it, and you just chuck in some earbuds, and then you listen to Business Wars, and then you're learning a little bit whether you're walking dog.
Story of my life, bro. Story of my life. Passive learning.
Passive learning. Yeah, so I do it all the time, man, and sometimes I listen to podcasts more than once. So
that's what I should have said to my teachers, I am not sitting on the couch doing nothing. I am passively learning from you.
Learning.
Yeah, I didn't write my assignment because I wanted to passively learn.
Yeah, you can't pause your teacher though. So I'll just pause you. I'm going to go.
Did you come up with passive learning, or is this a thing?
I don't know. I just thought that that's what it is. You're passively learning.
We'll just call it your thing, bro. We'll call it your thing. Yeah. And we've offered this to every high school student in the world. Okay, passive learning. It's a thing now. Actually, there was a phrase I started to use last week for tourism, and it's called a travel anxiety.
Oh yeah.
Because that's what I believe every tourist has at the moment. Like if I was talking to a mate who runs a motel, and he's got no bookings at all. He's got nothing moving forward at all in a little popular motel. And I'm like, it's just travel anxiety, bro. Once the anxiety's gone, you'll see your bookings come back again. But people just have travel anxiety. So these new terms that we can phrase, bro, let's claim ownership today. All right, let's claim ownership today.
I doubt that passive learning, that was the first time it's been coined. I do know that I do forecast that people won't book in advance like they have in the past for any sort of tourism activity, and it will be a lot shorter lead. And I'm talking weeks, not months. Even for internationals, in my opinion, I just don't think it's going to be 12 months in advance.
I've got the stats to back you up with that, because pre-COVID, our online bookings made up, around about 3/4 of the bikes that went out from our rental site, and I mean that's a good measure to use, because we have 150 bikes out there. And so, like I say, about 3/4 of them were pre-booked online, and now we're down to about 20% are pre-booked now. Everyone else is a walk-in. So, yeah, travel anxiety.
Well, it's indicative of the confidence that the people have, whether or not they're actually going to be able to travel on the date that they want to or not.
Totally, and especially with the action of some operators out there, like not giving refunds even when the extraordinary circumstances kick in. Like I'm still pissy with an accommodation in Hamilton, where I was supposed to go to a conference over there. It ended up falling at the time where they were in a lockdown in the Waikato, so we couldn't make it in, and I didn't. And okay. There's some responsibility on me for not going for a refundable price point, but I suppose, if I can't get in there, if there's controls beyond my means that stop me from getting in there, I thought they might be a little bit more reasonable than that. And oh, hi, is that Malachi?
Oh yes, it is. This is Malachi.
Hi, Malachi. Hi.
Yep. Sorry. You go. So it's school holidays here, whanau. So now I didn't. We're recording this in what date is it? 15th of December.
I wasn't going to timestamp it just for you, but that's right. Malachi and my daughter finished school yesterday, so I'm expecting my daughter to sort of run into the bus yard any time now.
Cool,
We're real
like
people, okay? We're real people, hey, bro.
Like, I don't know what he said, but I just said he could do it. So there you go. Hopefully he's not on the roof or something outside.
Take a new motorbike for a ride, eh? There, can I take
Yeah, I haven't got that yet. It's coming on Saturday.
Exciting.
Hey, Tuck, this has been a super cool chat. It's probably the longest one that I've done, which I actually thought I did actually know that was probably going to be the case, because my ideal time frame is between 22 minutes and 32 minutes, and we're at 1 hour.
I have to restrain myself, eh? Because honestly, I would love to just keep shooting the shit with you for hours. And I know that some of my answers were long, but that was me making them short.
That was concise, and I was passively learning from that as well.
As we sit at homes because we have travel anxiety and we're not ready to go out yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey man, cool. But I do really appreciate your time. There is a lot of value out of this, and I'll see you before Christmas anyway. But man, if I don't, I'll be very surprised. But if I don't, you have a great Christmas, epic New Year's, and let's get out on the bike again, and I can show you how to mountain bike.
Yeah, you can show me how to mountain bike, can't you? Yeah. No, thanks heaps for having me on, bro. And look forward to kicking back into events with you again next year, albeit in a much different way. Gosh, it's going to be an interesting time next year. But I have very little doubt that I'll see you in the next few days anyway. But much love to you and the family, bro, and to everyone else out there. Be kind, be safe, and hopefully see you all soon.
Bye, man. Thanks heaps. See you later.